Hi everyone, welcome to All Things Iceland, the place to get the inside scoop on Icelandic nature, history, culture, and language. My name is Jules, and today I am celebrating, or at least the announcement of my celebration. There will be other, of course, like celebrations happening during this month, but June 2021 marks 5 years of me living in Iceland. Living, traveling, growing as a person, all of that. And yeah, I am shocked in the fact that like I knew it was coming, obviously, because I can count, but I was just like, whoa, that has flown by. It is amazing to me that I've been living here now for half a decade. And of course, there are many things I've learned about myself. I remember I put out a video actually last year about like habits of Icelanders that I've picked up over the years, and you could check that out. As well as if you're new to my channel and you don't know my story of how I got to Iceland and all of that jazz, what it's been like for me here, I've made videos about that, so don't worry, I've documented that. Get that question a lot. And so in the description box there will be different video links that you can check out if you're curious about my story, just about like what I do here, all that jazz, lots of things. But this video I want to concentrate on the kind of things I've learned. I'm gonna go over, of course, 5 of them. And I ended up doing a podcast episode about this, so the audio version, and there's actually 10 things I talk about there. So if you want to hear all 10 things, you can listen to it down in the description box below, up to you. But this one, I'm gonna keep it to 5. And I'm also, because I get tons of questions about traveling to Iceland, I'm developing a really awesome like content hub for people who plan to travel here, particularly first timers to the country. So definitely make sure you're on my email list, because there is where I'm going to make that first announcement of all the excitement that's happening, of all the content that's being made, many different projects in the works that are great for people who are planning to visit here, and I don't want you to miss out. So email list below, check it out. But now I'm gonna get into the 5 kind of lessons that I've learned or ways that I've changed in Iceland. And the first is kind of something I need you to keep a secret between you and me, okay? It has to do with black licorice. And I can't believe I'm saying this. I mean, the reason why I say keep a secret is just don't tell Gunnar. I'm pretty sure he doesn't watch my YouTube videos, so that's good. And in essence, the taste of black licorice has been growing on me. And I can't believe I'm saying this, but it's true. It is growing on me. And Gunnar told me a long time ago when I first tasted it, I was like, no, and I'm not talking about the licorice that I've talked about in the past that has like the salmiak or like the ammonia type of powder on it and stuff like that. I'm just talking about like straight black licorice. That too was just too strong for my palate. And yeah, since I've been having candies that have marzipan and black licorice together, I'm noticing more and more that I don't really react in this kind of like, oh, that was intense. It's kind of like, oh, yeah, candy. And I was just like, what? This is, who am I? How is this possible? And if I tell Gunnar, he'll be so like, yeah, I'm so excited. And it might not seem that he would act that way, but at least Gunnar, when you're around him, like off camera, I feel like he's a different person in that he can be way more animated. And yeah, when it comes to candy, he would get super excited about this and probably buy a lot of it. That's why I'm kind of just keeping it under wraps, okay? So that is just a little bit bizarre to me, just because, like I mentioned, it was so intense in the beginning that I just didn't like it, and now I can eat it way too easily. Okay, number 2 has to do with how much my perception of Iceland has changed. And like many of you who have learned about Iceland through international media, I too was hearing very much of the similar or same things when I was moving in 2016, or maybe just a little bit before, about like equality here, about how peaceful the country is, about how there's like no crime practically, and the beautiful nature and all that jazz. And of course that makes you even so much more excited, especially if you're coming from a place where like, though it's almost the top, it feels like the opposite. And so coming here, I feel like I had on rose-colored glasses, like everything I saw was just like amazing. Iceland's amazing. Do I still feel like Iceland is amazing? Yes, However, my amazing definition has changed. I mean, it stopped being this place that almost comes off as like a utopia, and it's a realistic country in that like there are human beings that live here, there are people that do not very good things, there are scandals in the government or other places, there are people who are discriminated against, there are people who experience sexual assault, there is racism, there's like, when it comes to the different types of ways in which people can experience life, whether it's the good and the bad, that definitely happens in Iceland too. Of course, not to the same extent on average than, or I should say per capita maybe, than in other places. And I think it was just really healthy for me as a person living here, learning more about the society and realizing that there are things that are not so great or actually bad that need to be changed. And that within Iceland, Icelanders are talking about it themselves and the things that they are advocating for. And I'm getting a better understanding of that. Of course, understanding the language better does help, because I feel like the news that's translated from Icelandic to English, it does not cover all the different topics that are talked about in Icelandic. And definitely not timely in terms of, it can be at times that the news, I'm not saying this happens all the time, but a lot of the time there might be a news story, for instance, about the new wave of Me Too happening here in Iceland, and many foreigners have no idea about that. I mean, foreigners who are living outside of the country, or maybe are not keeping up with the news because it's written in Icelandic. And so for me, this has been such an eye-opening way of living in a new place, where there are so many aspects to it, especially since the media paints Iceland as this perfect place. And I think it's just been good for me, basically, to learn about what is really happening and the great things that we should celebrate and be excited about, and then the things that we have to recognize that need to change. And that is all necessary in order for any society to progress. So in a way, I'm happy about it, but it was hard to kind of be like, oh, that happens here? Oh, there are, you know, thefts, or like people who get murdered and stuff. It was like, it just like broke a perception that I had that it needed to happen. That's pretty much it. It's nothing that's a big deal in that it didn't make me feel like, oh no, Iceland sucks. It was just more like, okay, this is a society that, like everywhere else, needs to work on itself. And I feel like in a lot of ways it's doing that. And in some areas, they could definitely be doing better. And over on Instagram, if you are curious about like news stories, I try my best to do like a weekly roundup of Icelandic news stories so that people can kind of hear the things that are happening in Iceland that maybe you might not get exposed to otherwise. The next up is that I have been extraordinarily fortunate to travel around Iceland over the last 5 years, going into the Highlands, basically going to every region of the country. And I absolutely love traveling here. It's so much fun. And the crazy thing is that every time I go, even if it's been to a region that I've gone to many times, I always find something new to explore, whether it's a new like natural wonder, or it's a new restaurant that maybe opened, or they've changed up some things, or a person to talk to who's really fascinating. I've been lucky to have some of those people on the podcast, so the audio version, and then sometimes I have the videos of those people here on YouTube. And let me know in the comments for sure if you want to see more video interviews. I feel like sometimes they're quite long, but for me, it's just so awesome to be able to chat with people and really kind of dig into their experiences. So let me know if you do enjoy those, and I'll definitely be posting more, or at least that's my intention. But I think, you know, it's something that has helped me to change, because when I feel like often when I would travel, especially where it was maybe in the US, I'd go to another country, or even within the US, I would think, oh, I went to that area and I'm good. And it's like, no, so many places you really have not had the chance, even if you live there, to see all the things that are there. And I think especially if you were born and raised somewhere, there's a lot of, you know, potential for you to take it for granted and not like explore it. And so I think because I am not from Iceland, and have been living here, and I still see traveling as this huge adventure every time I go out, that regions that I've been to before, I'm still really open to exploring them and understanding better what else this place has to offer. And that's something I always love to tell people, especially different seasons here in Iceland. If you've experienced Iceland in summer, then definitely come back in winter. And even throughout the year, you can find, if you're going to the same place, that you still get different experiences. Like, I've been to the West Fjords many times, and every time I go, I'm like, wow, this is so fascinating, because I've learned something else different. I've seen something that I didn't get a chance maybe to capture the last time, or didn't realize I was missing out on it. So yeah, lots and lots of things have impacted me and helped change my perspective around travel, and why it is so necessary to go and see a place that you've been to before, maybe multiple times, depending on the place, of course. But in Iceland, I feel like going multiple times has always been beneficial and an awesome, impactful, and beautiful experience. Number 4 has to do with learning Icelandic, this lovely language that is a pain in the butt many times. And just complete transparency, it has been challenging for me. And I think the challenging part comes from that I'm often feeling really good about it and like doing well, and then sometimes like work gets in the way, life gets in the way, and I fall off from doing it as consistently as I should. And then all of a sudden I'm just like, holy crap, I feel like I'm not doing enough. I feel like I'm failing because I'm messing up in this thing that maybe I learned before. And I think this has been, honestly, one of the biggest challenges in my life in terms of really having to push myself, because there are other people who are probably learning another similar language, meaning similar in difficulty, or just the journey in general. And you often find yourself going in like, it's up and down. There's peaks and valleys. Sometimes you feel super great, and then there are other times you're just like, what is going on right now? What am I doing? Why am I doing this? I don't feel good about it because I feel like I'm not doing, everything possible. And sometimes it's just because you don't have the time in the day, or, life happens, like I'd mentioned. So for me, this has been an interesting challenge, I'll just say. And I'm not ever gonna give up on just continuously getting better. I think that is just within my nature. But it's kind of like within my own time. And I think that whenever people are considering Icelandic, that you have to take into account that, especially if you're doing a lot of self-studying and not going to courses or not going to like a university, bachelor's degree or something, that it will take you more time than those individuals, more than likely. Not necessarily the case all the time. There's some people who can really just like pound it out, but it is work, and I'm not gonna sugarcoat it, and sometimes it's gonna really suck. And that pushing through or taking a break is necessary, but just like getting back into it. And that has changed just my perception in life, because a lot of times if I wasn't good at something, I just stopped and went on to something I'm really good at. Like, why continue? But in this case, like I consider myself like mediocre in Icelandic. So it's like, normally if I didn't have to or didn't feel like I needed to, it's not like I have to, but I really do feel deeply like this is a part of something for me that's important, that yeah, it is something that I just continuously have to put my head to, and it has not been the easiest journey in the world. Let's just say there's been a decent amount of tears that have been cried because of Icelandic, but I still feel like it is a worthwhile journey that has taught me a lot about myself, for sure. Number 5 is that how I see the world is definitely different after living in this country. It's a pretty small country, as many people are aware, around 370,000 individuals. And when I moved in 2016, I moved in June of 2016, just as FYI. But of course, later that year was an election in the United States, and the world, and I think many people from the United States are aware that the world is watching whenever we're doing something major when it comes to like changing the president or some kind of, media thing that goes viral. Like, there's just so much influence that comes from the United States. And while I was aware of that influence, I had never experienced what that kind of looks like, and how people are talking about what happens in the United States or other countries that are much bigger than itself. And for Iceland during that time of the year, or even during like the beginning of COVID and how that was handled, it was super fascinating to kind of see how people were looking to like other nations that are like the superpowers that they're often called, that it helped me to understand just how influential these countries are. And I'm not saying like just in, you know, of course, money and decision making, but also like how people go like, wait, what is going on right now? And like looking to people who are from the United States, if it's something United States related, to help give answers, right? So like, this was the most fascinating with the election, especially. I got so many questions because I was the only US person working physically in the office for some time. I mean, it changed after, I think like a year or two, but for some time I was the only US person, and there was a guide or guides maybe that were from the US, but they weren't always in the office. So I usually got these questions and it was just like, I don't know how to answer this because I'm also puzzled, right? Like, and this is just really interesting. And then hearing about even like jokes about other countries and how Icelanders make jokes about the different ones. Some of them can be a little bit intense, like a little crude, but I think that's a part of like Icelandic humor as well, can come across this way. And if you haven't seen like Ari Eldjarn, he is a comedian. He has a special on Netflix that is really funny in my opinion, but I think it's really funny to me because I've been living in Iceland for this amount of time and I understand the jokes. So he has this one part of his show where he is having like a Danish accent, and if you ever heard a Danish accent, I think you would understand why people have like their own ways of like making fun of it. And I'm not saying it's okay to make fun of other people's accents, I just mean the way that he did it. And in terms of coming from an Icelander, just a little bit of backstory, Icelanders were ruled by the Danish for over 500 years. So I think they, you know, often like to make fun of them for different reasons, including that. And in this special, it was just, wow, like I realized how much I had changed in terms of course, being opened up to what Icelanders consider to be funny, or the different jokes they continuously make. The ideas that they have, you know, not everyone is the same, but there's like kind of collectively, you can get a sense for how Icelanders lean on certain issues. And that has helped to shape how I see, of course, what happens in my home country, meaning where I was born and raised, which also, of course, that upbringing has an effect on how I see Iceland too. So I think it's just been a really interesting mix of having been somewhere for the first 30 years of my life and how much that impacted me and as an individual helped me to grow. And now here in Iceland, my perception of the world and different people I get exposed to here is also helping me to grow as an individual, but it just creates a whole different view that I just wasn't expecting, because you don't realize things are changing for you until you start hearing yourself say something or you start thinking about it in a way and you're like, oh, is that how I feel now? Oh, okay, interesting. Or is that, I see this differently, you know? And just to give you some examples of specific areas that have changed for me perception-wise, I've made some videos about, has to do with like working environment, healthcare system, education system, like just these are the things that when I learn about them and the more that I get exposed to people's experiences here, and of course I start to compare them with the experiences that I've had and maybe with other countries and people that I, you know, meet from there and their experiences, I really get a different worldview, and I'm so appreciative of that. And this has been, you know, a continuous journey. I'm sure as the many years roll on, I will even change more. I wouldn't be surprised about that. But in the end, I think it's all about just kind of recognizing how, for me, to blend everything together so that I'm still respecting, of course, Icelandic culture, but also keeping parts of the culture that I come from that really mean a lot to me and have impacted me in a positive way. So that's essentially the 5 ways in which I have changed over the last 5 years of living in Iceland. And as I'd mentioned in the beginning, definitely make sure to subscribe to my newsletter so you don't miss out on some big, awesome announcements that I have coming for people who are planning trips to Iceland. It's gonna be affordable, it's gonna be super helpful, and most of all, it'll be a great resource for you to have an awesome adventure. So to keep celebrating along with me in Iceland and the many more adventures I have coming up, as well as more insights from me about the country, definitely make sure that you're subscribed and you hit the notification bell, as well as give this video a thumbs up. So it will help other people to get a chance to get some of this insight that I am sharing, and whether they want to live here or just travel, it's really fun to kind of get an understanding from individuals about what it's like to live in other countries. So as always, thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one.